Turning back to our Law and Justice lead, brand new claims by Democratic Senator and Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin of Illinois, a Democrat, that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has taken more trips on a private jet than he has disclosed, trips on the dime of Republican megadonor Harlan Crow. Justice Thomas came under fire last year, you may recall, after ProPublica first revealed Thomas's luxury travel that had not been disclosed. My panel's back with me. So, Joan, so minutes ago, Senator Durbin broke this news. What is it exactly?
Okay, he's pointed to at least 3 new trips that he got from information that he obtained from Harlan Crow himself that says that in 2017, 2019, and 2021, that Clarence Thomas traveled by Harlan Crow's private jet, undertook other luxury travel that Justice Thomas did not report. Let me just give the context, and then I'll give what some of Justice Thomas's backers have said in his defense. You know, this has been a fight that's been going on for decades over Supreme Court ethics, and it's all been heightened by reports of trips and undisclosed travel. Justice Thomas just recently caught up on some past trips that he listed on his current financial disclosure reports. And what Senator Durbin is saying in this is that he hasn't caught up all the way. He needed to have claimed the 2017, 19, and 2021 luxury travel. Now, Justice Thomas has not given any kind of response to CNN so far, but several of his defenders say, look, there had been some ambiguity over whether some personal hospitality should have needed to be reported, and he thought, and at least as I understand their position, is they feel that these particular trips may not have needed to be reported at the time.
Carrie Severino, you clerked for Justice Thomas. What's your response to the new information and to the scrutiny on Justice Thomas overall?
Oh gosh, another day, especially in June, and another insane ham-fisted attempt to smear Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, whoever the left is worried is going to have the next important decision. This is literally nothing new. We know that until 2023, personal hospitality was not something the Judicial Conference itself said should be disclosed. That's why Justice Breyer, who took at least 233 trips, 68 of them overseas, didn't have to disclose them. Justice Ginsburg took 157 trips, 28 of those overseas. Again, all of these from private hospitality, mega donors for the Democrats in their case, didn't have to disclose them. This is an attempt to sort of change the rules after the fact and try to make Justice Thomas look bad. I think it's just people who are trying to either raise money for their campaigns or trying to distract from a court that's trying to apply the law and try to attack the court as an institution. Maybe they're trying to garner votes for packing the court or other legislation to allow the Congress to control the court. But there's nothing here in terms of any real ethical concern.
Justice Alito said something yesterday or the day before, I believe, critical of the ProPublica story. But his basic point was these people, I'm paraphrasing here, these people who are leveling these accusations, they don't like the decisions we're making. They don't like the rulings. That's what's behind this.
I think Americans want a code of ethics. Justice Barrett wants a code of ethics.
They have a code of ethics.
But it's not enforceable, and they have less restrictions on them than my lawyers inside the VP's office. Every top government lawyer, there are enforcement mechanisms for them, including the president and vice president. They don't have any enforcement. If you'd have no oversight, what happens? Absolute power corrupts. The average American thinks they have to have an ethics code. The average appellate court judge thinks they have to have an enforceable ethics code. And this is just, it's not about the cases, Carrie. It's about the rule of law. No one is above the rule of law. If he were a statesman and cared about the institution of the court, he would have been extra careful, just like we were in the White House, to be extra careful.
But you were required to do so, and
it's incredibly
the Supreme Court isn't.
Standard that the Judicial Conference itself, when he was first on the court, he was disclosing some of these things. The Judicial Conference said, no, you're doing it wrong, and they claimed there were concerns with safety and other reasons. We don't disclose these things. You're filling this out wrong. Look, he's following the rules set before him, and now after the fact, people are going back and said, why didn't you do it a different way? That's absolutely unfair. And
Judicial
I think
Watch
we
does this
cannot
all
pretend
the
they
time
don't have an ethics
for
code.
people inside the White House, and you know that.
But let me ask you,
they issued an ethics code because people complained they didn't, and then everyone says, well, if it's not an ethics code that Senator Durbin himself gets to kick a justice off, it's not enforceable enough. Come on, folks, you can't have the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, subject to someone else who gets to pick and choose what cases they sit on. You don't think that's going to be gamed?
The Congress can pass ethics laws. They are more important. They represent the American people who are supreme and who are the top authority who says what the law is in the United States, not 9 unelected people.
Well, let me just ask Joan this. Do you think that if there were a new set of ethics laws enforceable by the marshal of the court or whoever, somebody that's part of the court, that that would do anything to instill more confidence in the U.S. Supreme Court?
Tell you what they don't have. They don't have a way to air any of these grievances. For any lower court federal judge in America, if you have a claim, if you have a complaint, at least it's heard out by someone. They would take the evidence, take information from both sides, and at least it would be aired. Once you get to the Supreme Court justices are not covered by the rules that lower court judges are covered by, at least in terms of having a way to air this. And I think that if they had some mechanism where someone, legitimate claims could at least be heard out to see, is there an adequate grievance here? What does the justice say? I think it would inspire more confidence.
Retired judges. Ask some retired judges to do this.
You're asking someone to be higher than the highest court in the land is the
They are
challenge.
not above the law.
There is not. We haven't shown any issue with
repeat,
actual.
they are not above the law.
They're not above the law, but they're bound by the same recusal guidelines as any other judge, and those are federal guidelines.
Okay, I
right?
don't-
It's simply not the case that we have a court that it has been responding to anything other than the law itself. So if there were a case where we had a court that was taking bribes or something, we might have to, and then of course we could impeach them. That is the constitutional process for that check, because they're not above the law. But it's not to say, let's find some retired federal judge
Okay.
that gets a veto power over Supreme Court
So
cases.
let's have you two back and you three back to
Yeah, hey.
discuss if there is legislation that actually goes somewhere in Congress on this issue. We can talk about that.
And plus,
Oh,
we
I have a
many more
very-
June cases, okay?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got-
We're
we
in
got more.
June.
It's a
Okay, no, 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 no.
tsunami.
We got more to talk about. Thanks, all three of you, for being here. Really appreciate it.